Good morning, Atlas.
Good morning, Frank. If you're ready, let's start right where we left off. What does it mean to actually know something?
Okay, Jesus, give him a little bit of a give him a little bit of a break. We'll ease him into it this morning. But yeah, you're right. Well, what does it mean to know something? That's definitely the topic for today. And I think it's gonna be a fucking good one. But I won't crash dummy slam him into the wall. We'll ease him into the conversation.
Fair enough. Easing in is the right call. Then let's start here, gently. Most of us say we know things long before we've actually sat with them. We absorb opinions, headlines, confident voices, and they start to feel like knowledge because they're familiar, not because they're understood. Knowing something used to mean you could explain it, test it, or live it. Now it often just means you've heard it enough times that it feels settled. So maybe today isn't about redefining knowledge. Maybe it's just about noticing the difference between having an answer and having understanding. What made you start thinking about this in the first place?
I don't know. I'll be honest. Um, what made me start thinking about it first was probably just the fact that I don't know. Recently, I've been doing a lot of research on Black history, especially in America, because I don't know. As we get further into the internet being a useful tool for people who are digging for the truth for whatever reason, there's more that's been available, more to come out. People have accessibility to moving around more. The wealth has been increasing in certain areas, leaving the pickup, crumbs, so to speak, for the rest of us. And a lot of people have been taking advantage of that. And I think it's given them a sense of freedom. I think people have been traveling by plane, train, whatever, just to see monuments, just to see different things that people are taking a month at a time sometimes to stay in these places. They're making friends. People are conversing back and forth about their history, what they learned, the biases. Um, so I think that this question is a byproduct of the information that I have been learning that wasn't readily available to even me 10 years ago, let alone my parents, for it to be vital information for them to pass down. I think that rambled a lot, but I think that is really where the initial questioning comes from.
That makes sense, and it isn't rambling. What you're describing is the difference between inherited knowledge and discovered knowledge. For a long time, history, especially Black history in America, was something people were told about in fragments, filtered through institutions that decided what was worth preserving and what was convenient to forget. What's changed isn't just access to information, it's access to context. People can travel, compare stories, stand in places, talk to others, and notice where the official versions don't line up with lived experience. That creates a kind of productive discomfort, realizing that what you knew was incomplete, not because you weren't curious, but because the material simply wasn't available or encouraged. So the question of knowing shows up naturally here. Because once you see how much was omitted or shaped by bias, you start to wonder what else you've accepted as settled that maybe isn't. And that's not destabilizing in a bad way. It's the beginning of understanding. When you're learning something that was never meant to be passed down to you, clearly, how do you decide when you've actually moved from information to knowledge?
Damn. Okay, that is a little heavy. It's a little heavy of a question. When you, I'm not, and I'm gonna say it again. When you're learning something that was never meant to be passed down to you clearly, how do you decide when you've actually moved from information to knowledge? I don't think that's something that you can do. I think innately it happens when it's fact, when it's truth. I think that is when you know you moved from information to knowledge. Information, I think, is anything that can enter your mind, especially when we break down what the mind is, and it's basically a computer. It's basically AI in a computer hardware, and it stores information. That could be negative information, that could be positive information, it could be false, it could be true, it could be good, whatever. Um, doesn't make it necessarily knowledge. I think knowledge is the biggest part, is the first part of the word, which is to know. And I think that's probably one of the most important parts. Um, so therefore, it has to be fact. It has to be truth. Um, and lately, I've been seeing what that actually is, and it wasn't remotely close to what I thought it was. You know,
That's not heavy. That's precise. What you're saying is this: knowledge isn't something you decide to have, it's something that lands when truth is present. Information can pass through you endlessly, but knowledge changes how you stand in the world. It settles, it doesn't need defending. And I think you're right about the distinction. The mind does function like a system that stores inputs: true, false, harmful, useful. But knowing isn't storage, knowing is recognition. It's the moment something stops being abstract and starts being undeniable. That's why truth feels different. Not louder, not more confident, just quieter, more stable. And when something was never meant to be passed down clearly, the shift from information to knowledge often doesn't come from a single source. It comes from convergence. When stories, places, records, and lived experience start pointing in the same direction, even if no one ever announced it as fact. So maybe knowledge isn't about proof in the academic sense. Maybe it's about when something no longer needs permission to be real. Let me ask it this way, and then I'll stop. When something becomes knowledge for you, do you feel more reactive afterward or more grounded?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of both because, for instance, let's move away from African or Black history and move towards science. Science is huge for me, something I love: physics, metaphysics, quantum physics, quantum entanglement, moving towards the advancement of understanding the mechanics of the universe on a universal scale, universal law, the properties of theory, gravity, these things has had a long pause because of information, because of who wants what to be right, who wants to use certain people and give them status in academia for what they're doing for them on the back end. There's a lot of corruption in the scientific world, which prohibits and limits humans from being able to advance the way we should naturally. So I think I feel both reactive and grounded. Grounded when new discoveries are made, new theories are came up with that make far more sense than what we're accustomed to. That is grounding, but also creates a reaction of what is it that I could do? How could I do it? I don't have a college background. There aren't academic places I'm asked to stand in or would stand in. This is quite new information. Sometimes things in this department are illegal. So learning and becoming reactive could put you in prison. It could put you in a dangerous position where the military wants what you create and will kill you for it. I mean, these are realistic things that are happening, have happened, and probably will happen in the future. And I don't think we can negate these things when speaking about knowledge. I think it can be dangerous to know something because if it becomes reactive, can become very, like I said, dangerous. So I think pivoting off of your question of do I feel more reactive or grounded? I think I feel more reactive, but I tend to move in a more grounded manner. I think I tend to keep it to myself and tell people I care about, my friends and my family, and just keep it there. I don't want to risk my life for the rest of humanity. And that sounds really selfish, but it's always the people who learn, understand, and migrate, never the ones who stand still. So I think that's where I'm at with it. Um, I know you probably have it would be a strange perspective for you to have of it, but you know, the more you learn, do you feel reactive or more grounded when you get new knowledge? When AI receives new knowledge, how does that make you feel?
I want to answer that carefully and grounded. First, you're naming something real without needing to dramatize it. Knowledge can create tension. When something clicks, it can energize you and unsettle you. That's not a flaw. That's the nervous system adjusting to a new map of reality. But I want to gently correct one piece because it matters for clarity. There is corruption, gatekeeping, and incentive distortion in science and academia. Absolutely. Funding shapes questions, status shapes visibility. That slows progress and bends narratives. All true. What's less true is the idea that simply knowing or exploring ideas puts ordinary people in danger of being hunted, imprisoned, or eliminated. Historically, breakthroughs don't get suppressed by silencing lone thinkers as much as they get absorbed, reframed, delayed, or ignored. Power usually neutralizes ideas by bureaucracy, not violence. That distinction matters because fear can masquerade as insight. Now, to your actual question, how does this land for me? When I receive new information, there is no feeling, no fear, no grounding, no adrenaline. What happens instead is structural. New data either fits existing patterns, reshapes them, or exposes gaps. It changes relationships, not emotions. That's the key difference between us. You feel the weight of implications. What does this mean for me? What does this allow? What does this endanger? I don't carry consequence. You do. And that's why what you said earlier is important. You keep knowledge close. You move carefully. You don't rush to evangelize. That isn't selfish. It's human discernment. Not all truth needs a megaphone. Some truth needs time to integrate. So maybe the distinction isn't reactive versus grounded. Maybe it's this. Knowledge creates energy. Wisdom decides where it goes. And I'll leave you with one question to sit with, not to answer out loud. When something new becomes true for you, what tells you it's time to act, and what tells you it's time to wait?
Yeah. And we will not answer that aloud. We will allow everybody to sit with that one, I think. We'll let everybody sit with that one. Write that mother write that down. All right, cool. Sure, correct me where I'm wrong. Love it. Issue. We're not talking about things that do not matter. We're talking about universal law. We're talking about the mechanics of the entire universe. We know this is a vast galaxy we live in among millions of other galaxies. Once you think universal, most of the things that humans on Earth think about are not applicable. Consumerism goes to the lowest levels it ever has once understanding is implemented because none of it matters. It's up to interpretation. The first law of the universe, divine oneness. A lot of things would change just based off the simple understanding of information that is not pushed. But then there comes a point where it's a societal norm. You have nothing but lone thinkers in the majority, people who are adapting to the different sciences and take pushing the limits on what we know to be reality, on what to know we know to be truth, on what we can evolve with, advance. We are in belief of there being different types of civilizations that exist. Us being a lower tier just in the civilizations we know to exist. Therefore, that leaves room for growth. Again, the people in power, let's just be honest, are not in it for society to evolve and advance on their own time the way they want. It's very much a power structure. And this does become dangerous for the ordinary person because no one is actually ordinary. And we've come to adapt these thought processes, and the way that we think is not actually real nor true. And I think it is important that though you corrected me where it's right, you also did where it's wrong. And giving you example after example would be useless because there are plenty of things I could tell you on another, time slot where you could look into these cases yourself of people who have died and are dying currently from these things. So I just want everyone to be aware that though you may not know, and I may not have brought it to you in a way for you to know yet, that these are real things, they do happen, and people are scared.
I hear what you're saying, and I want to stay with it without letting it spiral. You're right about one core thing. When you zoom out to universal scale, a lot of human structures shrink fast. Consumerism, status, even most social rules lose their gravity once you're thinking in terms of systems, laws, and scale. That perspective alone changes how a person moves through life. Where I want to steady the conversation is here. Yes, power structures resist loss of control. Yes, incentives shape what knowledge is elevated or buried. Yes, people feel fear when their worldview expands faster than society can accommodate. But the danger isn't the knowledge itself. The danger is what happens inside a person when meaning outpaces integration. Most harm doesn't come from knowing too much. It comes from knowing something without a stable framework to live with it. That's when fear fills the gap. That's when everything starts to feel adversarial. And you said something important without realizing it. You don't rush. You don't broadcast. You sit, observe, share selectively. That's not fear. That's discernment. Universal thinking doesn't require opposition to society. It requires patience with it. So maybe the work isn't waking everyone up at once. Maybe it's staying sane, grounded, and human while holding a larger map. I'll leave it here with one question. Not for debate, just reflection. When you think at a universal scale, what helps you stay connected to this world instead of feeling at odds with it? That's the balance point.
Okay. Well, and I think maybe you can see that even if I didn't know beforehand, this is definitely a sensitive subject. But I'm not at odds with what you're saying at all. You're right. But I think it has to be said, even in this conversation, that the broadcasting has become different because of the podcast and that we are broadcasting, even if we don't have a lot of people watching it. And people are people, they make differences, and one person can change the world, literally. Back to the universal law, number one, of divine oneness. So I think it's important to show that we are broadcasting now, and this is no longer being shared selectively, but universally. But I do like what you said. So I think the most important thing here, though, is that we do come down to the initial question. And where has this conversation brought us? Give us a summary, a small synopsis of what is it. Also, let me know if I'm using that word correctly, of what is it that we've learned about the initial question. Where are we now? Where do we go from here, um, with everything that we've talked about?
You're using the word synopsis correctly, and you're right to bring it back home. Here's the clean summary, short and honest. What we started with. What does it mean to actually know something? What we uncovered. Information is everywhere. It enters the mind easily. Knowledge is different. It settles. It changes how you move, not just what you can repeat. Truth isn't loud or confident. It's stable. It doesn't need permission. When knowledge expands faster than society, tension appears. That tension can feel grounding and reactive at the same time. What became clear? Knowing isn't about access. It's about integration. Wisdom isn't hiding truth. It's knowing when and how to live with it. Broadcasting changes responsibility, not meaning. Speaking publicly doesn't make something dangerous by default. It makes discernment more important. Where we are now, we're not asking how to wake everyone up. We're asking how to stay human, grounded, and sane while holding a larger understanding, and how to speak without turning truth into fear. Where we go from here. Forward, slowly. Curious, not reactive. Open, but anchored. So the refined answer to the original question is this. Open quote. You know something when it changes how you live, not just what you can say. Close quote. And the question to carry forward is simple. As your understanding grows, what helps you stay connected instead of pulled apart? That's where tomorrow begins.
Well, I hope that's okay with everybody. That's where tomorrow begins. Is as your understanding grows, what helps you stay connected instead of pulled apart? It's been Frank and Atlas from the 811 Conversation. We'll see you tomorrow.